No dig or no till is all the rage. But what exactly does no dig mean? It started really in agriculture back in the early 70s. Normally you would just burn the stubble, and then you would come in and you would plough it, and then you would harrow it, and then you'd sow the seed, and then you'd roll it. My husband was a farmer then, and he bought one of the first direct drills, and the drill just passed over the dead stubble, cutting slits and dropping the seed in the slits. And so it was very much simpler, very much quicker. It didn't compact the soil with all that heavy passes of equipment. And then in gardening, it seemed to make perfect sense. When you dig the soil, it always looks lovely when it's freshly dug, but actually it's quite detrimental because all the worms actually don't like being dug over, and worms are so important in soil. They aerate it, increasing the oxygen in the soil, getting the soil to pass through their bodies and turning the soil. So they are like mini ploughs, but thousands of them. And there's also the microorganisms. The soil is actually teeming with microorganisms. So if I picked up a handful of soil, there'd be lots of bacteria, fungi, tiny particles in it, more microorganisms in a handful of soil than people on the planet, they say. And those microorganisms also make the soil much healthier. They work it, they feed on it, and they do it. So it's a growing ecosystem. And when you dig it, you reduce that lovely top 6 centimetres that's teeming with these beautiful pieces, you're destroying them. So the less you destroy the soil and the less you tread on it, the less you dig on it, the healthier it is. So if I was making a new border from that piece of grass there, I would simply kill off the grass. I would then pit plant into that space the plants I wanted to plant. So I'd just literally dig out the bit of dead turf, pop the plant in, and then firm it down. And then when I'd planted the whole square, I would still see the dead sward around the plants, and then I would just add the mulch. And it's as simple as that. And you put the mulch on top of the grass, partially for aesthetic purposes, so it looks nice, and partially because it stops the light getting to the surface of the old turf. So when you dig soil, that's another very good reason not to dig the soil, is you will bring weed seeds to the surface, they'll have the light and they'll germinate. If you don't dig the soil, that won't happen. The ones in the top will have the light germinate, get rid of those, and then they've gone. And then the only weeds that will be coming there will be the ones that blow into the site. But that way is so easy. And on all the borders I've done in my garden, I've done that system. So here I've got a pile of topsoil. It's quite a sandy topsoil. It's got some worms in it. It's not the best topsoil in the world, but it will be fine because I'm going to mix it in with the green waste. With this topsoil, because it hasn't been sterilised, and I wouldn't really want it sterilised because it would kill all those beautiful microorganisms and the worms in it, I can be sure, pretty sure, when I spread it, I'll have weed seeds coming up out of this. If they're not perennial, I don't really mind because I'll just weed them out. And when you've weeded the top out, because you're not digging the soil, you won't have many more. Soil has a mineral content. That's all the rocks worn down over thousands and millions of years. And that is that gritty texture that when you rub soil between your hands, you feel. And that is really important because organic matter, as it rots down, the air spaces in it get smaller and smaller as it decomposes. So it will hold no air, it'll just get full of water and very claggy. When you mix it with soil, the mineral particles keep the structure more open, and you need the balance of the two to get it to drain. The green waste is a dark pile behind me, and that is purely all the local authority waste that people put in their green bins is taken away to a big plant where they turn it. And because they're big piles of waste, it composts at a very high temperature. So it's absolutely weed-free. And I think it's fantastic stuff. Some people complain that you get lots of other bits in it. And in that bucket there, I have got a little pile of stuff that you can see in there. But I don't mind that, I just pick them out. It is quite alkaline, so that will have a pH of something like 8. But for brassicas and things like that, that is perfect. And for many things, it will grow them very well. Whenever I want any soil or compost, I just try and find any that's closest to me or where I want it, that's the least expensive available, because a lot of the cost of these sort of bulky items is haulage. In times past, I used to use spent mushroom compost, and it is brilliant stuff. I would just whack on the top of a border about 100, 150 mil of it. Now the mushroom farm's been sold for housing, so I've lost that facility. So instead, I go to the green waste. I filled my raised beds. I've used half of the green waste and half of the soil, but I also did put a bit of well-rotted muck in it. Now, this is lovely old well-rotted cow muck, which was given to me by a very good friend, and I love muck, but invariably it comes with weeds. So what I do is, instead of putting it near the surface where it will come on through, is I tend to put it right down, maybe a good foot down from the bed, and then hopefully it'll be fairly easy to contain, and any annual weed seeds won't get enough light to germinate. It is lovely stuff, no doubt about that, but I just hate the weed problem. Whenever I put it on borders in the garden, I've regretted it later. The other thing that I'm going to do, just to perk up and liven up this mixture a bit, is I'm going to put some worms in. Now, these are good old Lumbricus terrestris, or the earthworm, beautiful little things. They'll aerate the soil, but I'm also going to give them a little bit of food. So I've got a bit of pretty well rotted leaf mould, and I'll put this on the top with the worms, and they'll just pull it down into the soil, making beautiful holes as they do so. Now, a lot of people think leaf mould because it looks good enough to eat, doesn't it? Beautiful, rich, brown and moist, but actually it contains virtually no nutrients at all. All it does is it helps the structure of the soil. But it's wonderful stuff, it's free, we have loads of leaves. I just put it into big builder's bags, leave it to rot down, and then I shove it on the beds in the spring.